Okay, so welcome back. In today's video, we're going to look at what we call the CSS Box Model. So before we start writing some code, I want you guys to understand this concept so that we can be able to use it in our layouts. All right, so the CSS Box Model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. It consists of margins, borders, padding, and the actual content. All right, so this is an illustration of what I'm talking about. And so in the middle right here, as you guys can see, this will be the content that we see on the page. And so around that particular content, we can have some padding, we can have a border, and we can have the margin. And so we can have a border and some content, and between that border and the content, we can put some padding, and outside the border, we can have a margin. Okay, so we can have a margin top property, we can have a margin right property, a margin bottom property, and a margin left property, similar with the border and the padding. All right, so let's get down and put this into practice. And so what we have to do is we have to create an element so that we can illustrate what we are talking about. And so over here, I'm going to create a paragraph element over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put what we call the lorem text. This is dummy text, by the way. You just write lorem in your Visual Studio Code. And yeah, I think this is enough, and I'm going to save this. All right, so before I go any further, okay, before I get into our CSS, what I'm going to do is let me open this with Live Server, and we're going to get into our browser. As you guys can see, we have our text over here. Okay, this is our element that we created. And so if I right click and inspect this particular page on elements, if we click on the body, we can see right here, these are the properties that I was talking about. And so we have the content right in the middle, we have the padding. In this case, we don't have any on this particular page. Border, we don't have any, but we have a default margin. Okay, so the browser has got its own default margin. So sometimes we want to do away with these defaults. We want to start from 0. And so what we usually do is we go back here in our CSS. What we have to do is we have to select the body, and we specify that we want to start with a margin of 0 and also a padding of 0. In case there's anything, we just specify that we want to start with the margin of 0 and the padding of 0. And so if I go back, now you guys can see everything is now reset to just nothing. Okay, so that's what we want. And so we want to go back now and start styling. What we have to do is we have to give it an ID. And so you guys remember in our previous lesson, we learned about using IDs to select our elements in our CSS. And so we're going to use this particular ID. All right, so if you guys remember, we used the hash and content is the name of that particular ID, and then that's what we're going to use. And so for us to to see what is happening, if I go back to that web page, you guys can actually see this is the element. And so we want to put a border around it, and so that we can be able to distinguish between the padding and the margins. And so what I'm going to do is in our CSS, I'm going to do the border here. And so border property, we can have what we call the border width, border dash width. And we can give this 5 pixels, that's the size. And then we're going to have border dash style, which means the style of the border. It can be dotted, it can be dashed, etc. But I want it to be solid. That's what I want. And then we can have the border color. So I can see BC. Border color, and then I can specify the color. I want it to be green. And so if I save this and go back, you guys can see that this particular element now has a border with these particular values. All right, so we want to start with our padding, which is the inside, that is the space between the content and the border. Currently we don't have any padding, and so we want to apply some padding. And so we can do padding dash top and give it a value, let's say 50 pixels, so that we can actually see what's going on. And then we want to say padding. All right, we usually go clockwise direction, right? And so padding right, so top right and then bottom and then left. That's what we usually do. And so 50 pixels, and then padding bottom, we want to have 50 pixels as well. And finally padding left, we want that to have a value of 50 pixels. And so if I save this and go back, you guys can see we have created some padding for our own element. And so there is now space between the border and the content. And so this is the property, the padding property. This is how it affects the layout, okay, of your particular element. And so we can condense all this into one, just one property. You know, you don't want to go like padding top, padding right, padding something. You want to wrap this in. So I'm going to comment this out and then, you know, condense it to one. So we just say padding, and then we can specify 50 pixels. And so this simply means padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left. And so if I save this, nothing changes. Hopefully so. Yeah, nothing changes in the browser. And so we're going to do this to the margin. And so margin, we say this is the outside area, right? The area on the outside of the border. And as you guys can see, we don't seem to have any margin. The margin is 0 for this particular element. There is no margin applied currently, and so we can say margin, and we can use that. We can say margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right, but we want to use this condensed one, this short form. We can say margin and then 50 pixels. And so if I save this and go back, you guys can see we have now spaces on the outside. This is the margin which has been applied, and so that's how it works. And so for this one also, we don't want to use this particular syntax. This is too long. We can condense it to just one line. If I go back, let me see, I did not save this one. If I save this and go back, you can see now there isn't any borders, but there is margin and padding being applied to this particular element. Okay, I want to maintain that border, and so I'll say border. So we need three properties. The first one is the width. We can say 2 pixels or whatever, pixels, 5 pixels, 10 pixels. And then the next one, separated by spaces, we want to say solid. This is the style. And then the last one is the color of the border. And so this is how you can shorten all these three: border width, border style, and border color. And so you save this and go back. Boom, we have that 2 pixels border now being applied. And so this is the concept of the CSS box model. And so it applies to each and every one of these elements. I could choose this heading or the subheading or, you know, this form. I can use these particular properties and say, okay, let it have a padding of this much, margin of this much. But obviously you want to do that in relative to other elements on your web page, okay, so that your content is organized. All right, so I think we are done for today. I want to thank you for your support. If you haven't subscribed, remember to do so. I'll see you in our next video. For now, I'm out. Bye bye.